It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new light, it's a new episode of Something's Gotta Give with your girl, Mary B. And today I want to tell y'all a story. In the month of February, I had my fourth grade version continuously pop up and visit me. And I found myself having moments where I would just randomly cry. I would have days where I was really sad and I couldn't quite understand why this was happening at first. And then I realized sometimes you just have to allow emotions to come up to the surface, especially if they have been repressed for quite a long time. Healing is allowing. And the only way things can pass is if you allow the time to do what it needs to do to have these emotions come and go. And so I sat with my fourth grade version the whole month of February. And I told myself that I would make an episode by simply sharing my story. It is vital in my healing to be able to express myself without the fear of being reprimanded or being told that my version isn't true. And not only is it healing my inner child and teaching my inner child that I can be confident in my voice, but it also allows me to grow artistically. I am a firm believer that your inner child is the version of you that gets to create, that is your artist. I feel like all of us have an artist that lays dormant within us, and being able to share my storytelling is my form of art. So I want to thank you in advance to being present in this episode and allowing me to share with you what I endured in the fourth grade. Leading up to the fourth grade, my mother and I did a cross country road trip from Las Vegas to Virginia. And during that road trip, we stayed in shelters along the way. And I had to help my mom drive by reading the maps to her. My mom was very lenient on me for just day to day life. I had to help her through a lot because, again, she's an immigrant and had signs from a very early age in my life that she wasn't mentally balanced. So when we finally get to Virginia, we stop at a Salvation Army, which in her mind she's thinking is a homeless shelter, but it was a different kind of Salvation Army. This was a place where you would go to receive food stamps. There's a food pantry there. They were more of a building that helped with lower income families or people who were just poor, but it was not a building that housed people. And I got taken away from her and was introduced into foster care. My first foster home, I was only there for a week. The purpose of this foster home was to see if my mom was going to be able to pass a state standardized test of performing at a certain level to be able to be a parent in the eyes of the state. My mom did not pass that test, so I moved on to my second foster home, which is where I spent the entirety of fourth grade. And I was living in Fairfax, Virginia, and this was the first time I was introduced to suburban America, but not just any suburban America, a very affluent white suburban America, but I was living with a black woman. And she had a son who just recently graduated high school and had his first year going off to college. And they had a very codependent relationship with one another. And so I was a filler for my second foster mother. She neglected me. I would go days without showering. I did not know how to take care of my hair. This was the first time I'm having to be this level of independence. See, with my mother, or even my family in Brazil, they still knew how to take care of me when it came to tending to my hair and making sure I showered, making sure I had clean clothes on. But when I was in this home, I didn't even have my foster mom tend to me in that way. I think I was a project for her to see if she could be a foster mom. And I think she learned with me that this wasn't something that she wanted to do long term. But see, in the foster system, there's so many kids. And so if you fit the description of what is needed to be a foster parent on paper, they're going to give you the job. But it takes so much more than checking off a few boxes to be present with a child who's already filled with trauma. Right? And that was my experience with my foster mother. Was, again, I was her project. And so living in this home, I was allowed to go days without showering because I necessarily didn't have someone being so attentive to me. She worked a lot and I stayed at home by myself a lot. I also locked myself in the room a lot because I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't feel loved. I was drowning in isolation. In the 4th grade was the first time I had suicidal thoughts. That is a very dark place to be in at such a young age, and not having a single person to reach out to express what I'm feeling because I have the world on my shoulders. And I don't know what it's like to be vulnerable. I had to be strong. I've always learned that I had to be strong and that my needs weren't important. So I had to tend to everything else around me. And so I knew even then, without having the emotional intelligence I have now, that this woman also needs me emotionally. So I'm going to cover up the fact that I am in a hole, and I'm going to be there for her because she's going through something, because her son is off to college and she doesn't have a relationship. She's the only Black woman living in this suburban society, and this is her first time as a foster parent, and I know that I'm a lot. So let me take care of her, even though it's supposed to be the other way around. So even in a home where I was finally supposed to be rescued, I was doing the rescuing. I also remember feeling so out of place when I was going to school because I'm around kids who have nothing in common with the way I was raised and the poverty that I know life to be. So it was a culture shock to be around a bunch of white kids and being the only Black girl, and not only being the only Black girl, but being the Black girl who hasn't put a comb in her head in days and doesn't smell the best, and feeling like I'm the only one in this entire school who's in foster care, and I have to hide that because I don't want to look like I'm different. I want to look like y'all so bad. You look so good. I remember going to my friend Rachel's house. She was my first friend that I made in that school. I'll never forget her because of how glamorous her life looked. She had the picture perfect room I used to only see in magazines and in videos on TV. She had all of the dolls, all of the Polly Pockets, and she had all the clothes to put on the dolls, and she had all the clothes in her closet, and the house was so clean. And I remember getting off from school and walking home with her and having her parents help the both of us with homework at the dining room table, which was a new experience for me because I had to teach myself how to read in the 2nd grade. I went preschool, kindergarten, and 1st grade without learning how to read. Got into 2nd grade, my teacher realized I didn't know how to read. Told me I was going to get held back if I didn't figure it out. I had to figure it out by myself. To fast forward, I'm walking home with this very sweet girl who's sharing not only her home, but her parents and her intelligence with me to help me become better. Sometimes having the better things of life is also a traumatic trigger. So I'm being triggered left and right. And I remember always inviting myself over to the friends that I made, inviting myself over to the friends' houses that I had made in the fourth grade. So Rachel was a friend, Maggie was a friend. I remember I made friends with an Ethiopian girl, and they all had similar lives, right? They all lived in a home with parents who cared and were adamant about doing their homework, and had people who would pick them up and drop them off at school and take us to football games. This is the first time experience for me, so of course I wanted to cling on to it. But I remember my friends would kind of need to make space for me, rightfully so on their end, because why is Mary so attached to me? This is weird. I don't know why this weirdo girl just wants to hang out all the time and needs to be around so much, and why is she acting like this is her first time? And I don't mean to speak in a language that is harmful to me. I know that quote unquote weirdo girl was a very authentic version of me that was so in awe and was just trying to figure out, how do I play a part in all of this that's going on? How do I play a part in the home that is the nicest home I've ever been in, but I'm also being treated like crap? How do I find a balance with showing up like, ooh, I have clothes and I have toys and I want to be around your clothes and your toys and your home, and I want to have access to your parents too? Like, I didn't know what to do in this. And I think because I'm healing and I do know how to respond with just the normalcy of life, versions of me that I had to repress for so long come up. And so, of course, my fourth grade version was kind of knocking on my door. And the only way I know how to heal that version of me is to honor the truth that I did not know any better, and that I did not have control over myself. Unfortunately, as children, our voices, for whatever reason, don't matter. Even though we are much more intelligent, more emotionally inclined than many of the adults who teach us about life. I honestly feel like the children who grow up in traumatic scenarios deserve to be heard, because they have much more emotional intelligence than adults like to admit and like to honor. And a version of me would like to share that that is the truth with a lot of kids. And if we would just figure out how to build a safe space where they can speak, is very important. I know now that I had such a blocked throat chakra for so long, and what I wish may have been tended to a little bit more growing up was the fact that maybe they should have tried a little harder with the pairing of a therapist. I can wish a plethora of things, but my experience was my experience, and I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for everything that I endured. And spreading awareness on the subject, I feel like, is the first step to everything. So if you may have not ever experienced something like this in your life, and you may have never heard a story like this before in your life, because it takes a lot of courage and strength, and not a lot of people are going to be able to express themselves so freely, so openly to people. I feel like that is my calling. So for the listeners, I hope you have a new perspective on how delicate and intricate and how many point of views can be going on with a child in their experience within a new area, within being in the foster home system, having foster parents, and being of color and navigating life in that way, and being dropped off in a world with no preparation. To be understanding to how difficult that can be on a child. I honor how difficult it was for me. To this day, with me telling my story to you now, it still brings tear to my eyes. And who knows? It may always trigger me. It may always make me sad. But the more I speak, the more at peace I become with the subject, the more grace I give myself, and the more I honor what my inner child endured. And the more confident I grow within trusting God's divine timing. Thank you so much for just listening. Sometimes having someone to just hear you out can be so powerful. I really appreciate that. It took me a lot of strength and courage and wisdom to be able to do what I did today. So as always, I send you strength, courage, wisdom, and love to get through whatever it is you may be struggling with this week, whatever you need to face this week. As always, I look forward to making another podcast next week. I really love evolving, growing with you all, building this platform, building myself on this platform. And I hope you get to build as well with me on this journey. Ooh. Till next time, y'all. Bye-bye.